What was a house rule you had as a kid that you thought was completely normal until you grew up and realized not all households followed? My mom used to pay me to be my own babysitter between the ages of 10 to 14 or so. The rule was that as long as I didn't make a mess and I'd put myself to bed by the time she got home, then I got $10 in the morning. This is hilarious and I love it. Meanwhile, my parents slave-labored me into doing this for my younger sisters, 5 and 8 years younger than me, from age 10 on, saying they paid me in food and rent. Eventually they added my brother, 15 years younger, to the list. I hate parents who do that whole "I feed you so you owe me" bullshit. Like, no, that's the bare minimum you're required to do as a parent, and if you weren't prepared to do it without expecting something in return, then you shouldn't have had kids. My best friend's mom is like that, and now all her kids have mental health problems because she messed with their heads and made them feel guilty for existing. When I was really young I had a night-night bell. It was this old clay bell that hung in the kitchen, and when I had to go to bed I got to ring the bell and everyone would come say good night and then I would go to bed. Not really a rule, but a weird little ritual in our house. I love that. Even better if you are from a large family. Just the idea that everyone will take a minute to wish a family member good night is so wholesome. I just feel a little bad for the last one to ring the nighttime bell. My family had a thing we called the food blanket. When we'd eat casual meals, we'd lay a blanket on the living room floor and eat on it, like a picnic. My parents didn't want to get any food on the carpet. Instead of set the table, my mom would say, "Go lay out the blanket." I remember being really confused when I learned every family didn't have a food blanket. We started doing this with our daughter when she was 3, blanket and all. Even I get excited on picnic evenings, because she loves it so much. I'm sure her little brother is also going to love them when he gets a bit older, so I imagine this will be a tradition for us for a while. Maybe it's not a house rule. But when I was 6 my mom told me that if I behaved she would let me skip school on Saturdays and Sundays. One day my teacher said "See you Monday" and I knew. So you didn't wonder why everyone else had off too? How would I know? 1. The subject was never brought up in school. BC the other kids knew and or I was a shy child so wasn't bragging about it. 2. I lived in an apartment so I wasn't friends with any kids on there. And forget about playing in the street. 3. Where I live some kids go to school in the mornings, 8 a.m. to 13 p.m., some go in the afternoon, 12 p.m. to 17 p.m., so even if I went to the park on a school day, chances are some kids would be there. It didn't lasted for long but I get to laugh at my innocence for sure. We weren't allowed to watch anything remotely sexual, like if people were kissing on screen my mom would freak out and run to cover the TV with a pillow and go blah blah cough loudly until it was over. Once I tried to see a PG-13 movie with my friends and my mom cried and my dad called me horrible for making her cry. I was 14. Lol, my friend's parents were evangelical Christian ministers and at my friend's ex-country team dinner he put Borat on for the movie. His mom somehow let us watch until the super church scene where she ran in the room sobbing, ejected the DVD and broke the disc in half. It wasn't even her son's DVD though, it was another kid on the team's. My mom was similar, but with nude/sexual scenes. Bare breasts? Cover your eyes. Because I definitely couldn't see breasts, I am a girl I roll. Sexual scenes, even ones where you couldn't see anything besides angles of making out, a bare back, etc. I could still hear what was going on. Watching the Titanic with her was fun. We weren't allowed to get into the fridge or the cabinets without asking permission. My family was very poor and we had a limited food budget, so eating something without permission very possibly meant eating one ingredient of a meal my stepmother was planning on cooking within the next few days. I went to friends' houses and they just ate whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. I always had to ask for snacks when I was younger and I got one a day. Then I go off to college and come back to visit and my much younger siblings, different marriages, are just going willy-nilly into the pantry without asking. It was then that I realized our generation gap included a whole class move up. I grew up poor. My sisters grew up middle class. Lucky. The difference between the lifestyle of me and my sister and brother, and then the next brother and brother, there's 5 of us. All the same father though, they just loved kids I guess. Oddly though we're all adults now, there's no grandkids and I fear they may never have any, is definitely that kind of jarring. I realize looking at their lifestyle that comparatively, I grew up poor. Then they'll have behaviors that make them seem poor, like wearing the same clothing until they have huge holes and fall apart, that I know came from having been poor, but there's a significant difference in the lifestyle standards. Every 3-week run to the library was what I got, and they got like, game consoles. Lucky, I guess, but I wouldn't trade it. I liked getting to straddle the transitional line between the past and the future. I wasn't allowed to take a shower if I was home alone. I also learned at age 7 that other households closed the bathroom door when using the toilet and keeping it open was weird. I learned that by keeping the door open at a friend's house. A friend walked by the bathroom, saw me, told their mom called my mom, and all of a sudden the new house rule was we close the bathroom door when using the toilet. I can't take a shower if I'm home alone either. My dad apparently busted his head open slipping in the shower when he was living alone in college. He had to get up and drive himself to the emergency room. Now he won't let us shower if we're alone, because he's paranoid the same will happen to us. We weren't allowed to walk in our dining room unless we were using the room for a special occasion. The carpet always had the just vacuumed look, so it was a dead giveaway if anyone walked across it. My mom had a second living room that nobody was allowed to walk into no matter what. Many moms had that room in the 50s and 60s. Plastic cover on the lampshade. Yep. We had a piano growing up that the kids weren't allowed to touch. I was a teenager when mother finally sold the piano when she was redecorating, and she was lamenting how sad she was that neither myself nor my sister ever learned how to play it. Yes. Never learned how to play the thing we weren't allowed to touch, that we did not have any learning music books or an instructor for. That was some big brain time there for me for a while. Not a rule, but still to this day I am befuddled at my mother's reasoning. When I was a boy we lived in a pretty rural part of Mexico, with horrible infrastructure. Power would often go out in the middle of the night. She would proceed to wake my brother and I up, simply to wait until the power came back on. For the life of me I cannot figure that out. She wasn't afraid of the dark, she just wanted to make sure we saw the power return. No curfew as long as I told my mom where I would be. I was always honest BCS. I loved being 16 with no curfew. My mom was the same way. I was never scared to be honest with her either. The only rules I had were don't drive drunk and nothing stronger than weed. Parents don't realize that being strict actually encourages reckless behavior and lashing out. I had the same routine with my parents. As long as I was honest and safe, they didn't lean on me. My dad even bought me a pack of condoms before my first prom. Awkward ass conversation, but in all seriousness, I'm genuinely glad he cared enough about me to say I just rather you had them with you, that's all. Naturally those bad boys expired long before they could be used, but it's the thought that counts. We weren't allowed to eat anything without first asking. Even a glass of water, we were required to ask first. When my boyfriend and I started dating, I would ask his parents if I could eat or drink something if I was hungry or thirsty, and it was a hard habit to break when his mom told me I could literally eat or drink anything, other than the alcohol. It was so weird to just go into the fridge or pantry without permission. I sometimes have to fight the urge to ask my BF if I can eat our food in our apartment. When I went to my parents' house over Christmas, I was reprimanded for getting an apple without asking first. It's just all so weird, but it used to be so normal.